We are the guys who are manning the talk shows.
Right.
We are the guys that are running the major companies,
right.
making the movies. We are running the government. We are heading up we have major CEOs in the major companies around it. And we have to now look at the world in a different way. The 80s was a time of let's make money real quick. And I think people in the 90s are feeling a spiritual emptiness. And we have to take what we all felt was worthwhile, the good parts of the 60s, the worthwhile parts of the 60s, and reintroduce it again in the 90s. And I don't mean by liberal, I'm not talking about liberal philosophies in terms of, politics. I'm talking about philosophy.
Rob Reiner, who became famous for his acting in All in the Family and much admired as a director of classic films, was brutally murdered on December 14, 2025, in his Brentwood, Los Angeles home, alongside his wife, photographer Michele Singer Reiner. He was 78. She was 68. Their death is the subject of a homicide investigation. Their son, Nick Reiner, is being held. Rob Reiner, the son of legendary writer-director Carl Reiner, first made it as an actor, portraying Meathead, the liberal son-in-law on Norman Lear's groundbreaking sitcom All in the Family. It earned him 2 Primetime Emmys and made him a familiar face on American television. The series became a cultural discussion for the generational clash of the 1970s. Reiner reinvented himself as a director with an extraordinary streak of films in the late 20th century that have become classics in several genres. He debuted with the rock mockumentary This Is Spinal Tap, followed by the coming-of-age drama Stand By Me, the adventure The Princess Bride, the romantic comedy When Harry Met Sally, and the legal thriller A Few Good Men. Reiner's range made him one of Hollywood's most versatile and celebrated filmmakers. At the same time, he continued to act in films and television shows. Reiner's company, Castle Rock Entertainment, made a number of popular properties, including Seinfeld and The Shawshank Redemption. He emerged in the 21st century as a prominent liberal voice and activist, especially in democratic politics, gay rights, women's rights, and children's issues.
Rob Reiner won 2 Emmys for his role as Archie Bunker's son-in-law in All in the Family, but the son of comedy writer Carl Reiner was destined to become a film director. His memorable movies transitioned through various genres, the satire and comedy of This Is Spinal Tap and The Princess Bride, Stephen King adaptation Stand By Me and Misery, romantic comedy with When Harry Met Sally, and the drama of A Few Good Men. His latest film is the true story of the trial to convict the murder of civil rights activist Medgar Evers. It is called Ghost of Mississippi. It stars Whoopi Goldberg, James Woods, and Alec Baldwin. And I am pleased to have Rob Reiner here on this broadcast at last. Welcome, sir.
Thanks.
It's great to have you here.
It's nice to be here.
Let me talk first about this movie and then about directing generally.
Sure.
About you wanted badly to make this film.
Yes, I did. I mean, for a long time, I had been interested in trying to find a way into a film that had civil rights and race relations as a backdrop, but I just never could find my way in. As a white person, I felt it might be presumptuous of me to make a film, delving into the experience of a black man in America, like a Malcolm X or a Martin Luther King or even Medgar Evers for that matter. But I remember very distinctly when I was 16 years old and when Medgar Evers was assassinated. I remember very clearly that time. And, my family's always been very politically oriented, and it was discussed in my house and in the circles that I moved in, and it was very, very shocking at the time and very disturbing. Nothing like this had ever happened in our experience. This was 5 months before President Kennedy was assassinated, and so we had never experienced anything like this. And here was a man, Medgar Evers, who he was not a rabble-rouser. He was not some maniac running around in the streets rioting and so on. He was a very conservative, intelligent, very methodical man in trying to gain rights for his people. And he just wanted them to be able to vote and go to school and eat at a lunch counter. And here he was assassinated in his driveway in front of his wife and children. And it was
shot in the back.
Shot in the back by a coward. And I remembered it very distinctly. And then when the retrial, the assassin was tried twice in 1964. Both were hung juries. And then when he was retried again in 1994, 30 years later, I remember following it on the news and thinking, my God, I can't believe they're going after this guy again. And I thought, well, let me examine this. Maybe this is my way into this subject matter. And as it turned out, it was.
And was it hard to do? Because you're dealing with Byron de la Beckwith a little bit as an assassin at a younger age, and then later.
Right. The most difficult thing about this film is, and that I have never tackled a film that is based in any kind of historical reality. That, to me, was the hardest part, because I had, when you're given a clean slate as an artist and you're allowed the freedom to create whatever you want, you can, manipulate characters and manipulate the structure of a movie. But when you have not only historical reality to deal with, and I take the responsibility very seriously because I understand people get their history through movies, and you have living people who are still alive, who experienced this and who went through this horrible tragedy, you owe it to them to be factual and accurate, which then hamstrings you in how you're going to tell a particular story. I mean, to give you an example, in the first two trials, Beckwith took the stand. In the third trial, he did not take the stand. If it were up to me and I had the opportunity, I would take this heinous, horrible antagonist, throw him in the courtroom with my hero protagonist, and have them go at each other.
Few Good Men.
Yeah, exactly, like I did in Few Good Men with Nicholson and Cruise, but I couldn't do that because it didn't happen. So I had to find other ways to make it interesting and dramatic and entertaining.
Does it bother you a little that so many people get their history from movies?
It bothers me because I know that the movies are not all so accurate.
In the same way if they got their history from novels.
Exactly. I mean, that's why I feel it really is the responsibility of an artist, if they're going to tackle an historical subject, that they be accurate.
Ever had this discussion with Oliver Stone?
No, I haven't had this discussion with Oliver Stone, no. But listen, everybody has the right to do what they want to do. And I actually am a fan of Oliver Stone's. I mean, I like his work, but I do think there is a responsibility. And particularly
I'm not a fan of his conspiracies.
No, but, I had long discussions with Myrlie Evers. She was a consultant on the film, as was Bobby DeLauder, the young district attorney who tried the case. And I told both of them, I said, if you don't feel comfortable with what we're doing here, if you don't feel good about the script or how we're developing this project, then I'm just not going to do it.
But for reasons of commerce, it was important to make this a story about the getting of Byron de la Beckwith. That's a story that's more compelling than how great Medgar Evers was as a civil rights leader.
Well, it wasn't so much from a commerce standpoint from my point of view. Because,
I mean storytelling that you think sells. I don't want to make it.
Well, the fact is, this is what happened. I mean, they did get Byron de la Beckwith, and that did occur. And he was brought to justice in a large part by this one young district attorney who, for 4.5 years, reinvestigated and reprosecuted this case almost to the point of obsession. And because in doing my research on the film, discovered that he was from a racist background, that his parents were segregationists, I said, well, this is an interesting way into this subject matter because I have an opportunity to examine my feelings about racism through this character and through this character's growth.
Play this game with me. I'm your producer. We're going to make this film. Tell me what you would say in great candor about the casting. I want Whoopi Goldberg to play Myrlie Evers. Good idea? Bad idea?
Now, who am I again?
Well, see, I'm playing wrong, though.
You're the director?
Wrong. Yeah. No, let me see.
And I'm the studio head?
Yeah. Why do you want Whoopi Goldberg to play Myrlie Evers?
Well, having
I'm putting up the money, you're going to direct the film.
Okay, and I have to convince you why I want Whoopi. Myrlie Evers, having spent time with Myrlie Evers, I know her to be a woman of great dignity, great elegance, great presence. She has a power when she enters a room where eyes go to her. She commands a tremendous amount of respect and has this dignity. I need an actress who has the kind of power that she can portray on a screen, that a kind of presence on the screen to come up to the kind of power that Myrlie Evers has. Now, you may say to me, you may sit here and say, well, Whoopi Goldberg has done mostly comedies in the last few years. What makes you think that this woman can pull off the power that is needed and the dramatic elements that are needed for this film? And I can just go and say to you, well, you go back to look at her work in A Color Purple, The Color Purple, and A Long Walk Home. A Long Walk Home, which was about breaking the segregation line in the bus strike. Right. And she's done an enormous amount of good work.
Whoopi Goldberg's not available. Who else might we want?
I think Oprah Winfrey could do the part.
As you were saying it.
She could do the part. Yes, she could have done the part.
Was she up? Did she talk to her?
I did talk to Oprah Winfrey, actually. And she wasn't available or maybe the part wasn't big. I don't know what the reason was, but she decided she didn't want to do it. Alfre Woodard is another good actress there are a lot of good actresses, but to me, Whoopi Goldberg has the most power and screen presence of anybody. And Myrlie has that kind of presence.
James Woods.
Yes. James Woods, to be honest with you, was not on my list. I had a list that included Jack Nicholson, Gene Hackman, Gene Hackman, Robert Duvall, Dennis Hopper. These were the kinds, because the age was right. Jimmy, when he was submitted to, I said he can do it. He certainly got the chops to do it, but I don't know about the age.
Chops means what?
The acting ability.
He's got it.
He's got the acting. That's a musician's term. When they say somebody's got good chops, he can play. Okay. Yeah. But he doesn't have the age. I mean, we see Beckwith for the most part in the film at age 73. Jimmy came in to meet with me for another part and lobbied and very heavily to read for me for Beckwith. And I said, well, Jimmy, I know you can act the part. The question is, can you be Beckwith? It's going to be believable that you're Beckwith. He read for me in the office, and I was blown away.
Blown away.
Yeah. And I said, well, let's do a makeup test, because I don't want to be one of those things where, they put that makeup on and you look like a burn victim, because it's that bad prosthetics. But we did the makeup test, and it was terrific. And
he had the Southern accent knocked. He had everything down.
Well, fortunately, we had a lot of research material for him. We had volumes of tapes. Beckwith had given an interview to a reporter in WLBT in Jackson, a guy named Ed Bryson, which we recreated for the film. And it went on for a couple of hours. And so Jimmy had a real opportunity to study him, yeah.
Alec Baldwin for Bobby Lee.
Bobby DeLauder, Alec Baldwin. Alec, I know, again, you might say, well, he plays these dark, edgy, moody characters, but I know...
This is a knight in shining armor.
He's the hero. He's the everyman. He's the good guy who cracks the case. Now, I know another side to Alec Baldwin. I spent a lot of time with him. He has a development deal at Castle Rock, the company that I helped co-found. And, I see him in the hallways. We have lunch together, and I see this really charming, engaging, funny, sweet, warm guy, unlike anything I've seen in the movies. And I know he's got the chops, the acting chops. And I said, let's go.
Do you ever want to put yourself in these films?
No.
If you saw something that was just right.
No, because I think that, Hitchcock used to do that, but he would only be in for a little split second. And also, he didn't have the kind of profile that I had as an actor before. So, a lot of people would say, oh, that's Hitchcock, but a lot of people still remember from All in the Family and other things I've done now, Sleepless in Seattle and Bullets Over Broadway, little thing. I think that if they see me in a movie, it jars them. It would be jarring for a second, and then eventually they get used to it and accept it. But I think the movies I've made, I think the main thing I do in making movies is I try for the camera work, the writing, the acting, the music, the costumes, the sets to be invisible. Everything is just kind of there, and it happens. You don't see the camera moving around in wacky ways. You don't see the writing, hopefully you don't see the writing pushing too hard, or the actors pushing too hard. I like it all to be kind of seamless. So I think if I were in it, it would be a little bit of a bump in the road.
What influenced your father on you as a filmmaker, as a member of this profession and this community?
Yeah, well, he has had, the greatest influence on me. As a young teenager growing up, I used to spend my summers down at the Dick Van Dyke Show, where my dad was producing and writing the old Dick Van Dyke Show. And I watched him on a daily basis. I spent every day for 3 months down there, every summer, and watching how he rewrote the scripts and worked with the actors and helped stage scenes and cut the films. And I saw him work out of a very real place in his heart and his mind. I mean, if you recall, when the Van Dyke Show first came on the air, it was thought of to be like the first almost realistic sitcom, because it dealt with real life problems between married couples and, a guy who was married and also had a workplace. And so he worked out of a very honest, real place in his soul, and I saw that. And I mean, for instance, he would come into my room sometimes during a day, and he would, if he was stuck for something, and he would say, "Anything happen in your life lately?" That's it. It was a way that he would
I need a plot turn
try
here.
to find something, the way to get it into the shows. And so, but I saw him work from a very real, organic place, and I hopefully that I've taken that from him.
Who else has influenced you?
Well, I had a great education on All in the Family. Even though I was in the show.
Norman, or because
Norman Lear and Carol O'Connor. Carol O'Connor, in terms of learning about acting and how actors contribute to a scene and how they can make a scene more believable and realistic. And Norman Lear, because he forced us to do our best work. He's what I refer to as a kokleffel. It's a Yiddish word, and it means stir the pot, a ladle that stirs the pot up. And what Norman would do is, oftentimes, if we were stuck on something, or even if we had gotten something that was pretty good, he would come in and say, "No, what can we do? What's better? What can we find that's better here?" And he'd make us examine ourselves, our own lives, our own thoughts and feelings about whatever the subjects we were dealing with in that particular show. It was always very contemporary. And I learned about how shows were structured, and about how scenes were staged. And I was allowed to have my own creative input. And because we did the shows in front of a live audience every week for 200 shows, I learned what audiences liked. And I learned what they responded to and those things.
All in the Family is playing somewhere as we speak.
Yeah, right here in New York all the time, yeah.
Is there a movie you want to make, a story you want to tell, but you're not you don't have it together for whatever reason?
Yes.
Yeah, what is it?
Yes, I've wanted for years to make a film about the 60s, an overview of everything that happened in the 1960s. And the 60s is 1963 through 69. So the end of the 50s was basically 1960, when the assassination of President Kennedy changed the way we looked at everything. And it gave birth to, the civil rights movement was starting, but it gave birth to the anti-war movement and the hippie movement and the feminist movement, the pill, all of those things. It was a time of incredible unrest and, as we know, upheaval in this country. And nobody has done a film that is an overview of everything. We've picked away, and Oliver Stone's done a number of Vietnam films, and we've picked away at pieces of the 60s. But I would love to do a whole picture that really talks about what the 60s was about, which I believe was about Jesus Christ.
Sorry?
Yes, it's going to hear now the neck brace goes around. We have done this, since the beginning of time. Whenever the person who emerges as the one who says, "Do unto others," or "We are all one, we are all connected," we kill that person. We did it to Jesus, we did it to Gandhi. In the 60s, we had Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, Bobby Kennedy, John Kennedy, and Malcolm X, all working towards the same kind of idealism of, treat your fellow man with decency and respect, do unto others. Malcolm X, at the point at which he died, started coming to that point of view. Exactly. And the hippie movement, although buried in a sea of drugs and bad press and all that, the essence, the core of the hippie movement was do unto others, was we are all one, we're all connected. And that was destroyed in an effort to try to stop the war in Vietnam. All of these things were going on, and to me, the whole Jesus philosophy, as it were, was the epitome of what happened in the 60s. And nobody's told it from that point of view.
Would you, in that movie, include a kind of alternative vision now about the 60s? I'm a child of the 60s. That says neoconservatives primarily will look back at the 60s and say that's when America took the wrong turn. There was too much laissez-faire. There was too much do as you please. There was too much lack of the kind of traditional values that made America strong.
Well, I don't know that I would say that. What I would say is we have to start paying attention to the things that we supposedly have built all of our religions on. If we really want to honor our religious leaders and the leaders who preach the right kinds of things.
The core of the 60s for you was about some sense of a religious...
The core of the 60s was a very...
Shared religious values.
Yes, it was a very spiritual thing.
Spiritual.
Yes. And I think you find right now in this country with Marianne Williamson and Deepak Chopra and Tony Robbins, there are people are reaching out now like crazy for some kind of spirituality, to latch on to something. And I don't know that they're going to find it in the fundamentalist movement. I think they want something a little deeper and a little bit more, substantive that they can hang on to. And I'm not saying, we're not talking about going back to a day of taking acid or drugs or anything like that. I'm not talking about that. Like I say, the philosophy of the hippie movement was buried under a morass of drugs, unfortunately. But the philosophy was the same philosophy that Gandhi had, the same philosophy that Jesus had, the same philosophy that Martin Luther King had. And I think that you're a child of the 60s, I'm a child of the 60s. I'm going to be 50. I don't know how you old, but I'm sure you're in the same
54.
You're in the same range as I am.
I entered college in 1960.
Okay, we now are running the show. We are the guys who are manning the talk shows.
Right.
We are the guys that were running the major companies,
right.
Making the movies. We are running the government. We are heading up we have major CEOs in the major companies around it. And we have to now look at the world in a different way. The 80s was a time of let's make money real quick. And I think people in the 90s are feeling a spiritual emptiness. And we have to take what we all felt was worthwhile, the good parts of the 60s, the worthwhile parts of the 60s, and reintroduce it again in the 90s. And I don't mean by liberal, I'm not talking about liberal philosophies in terms of, politics. I'm talking about philosophy.
And why can't you, what's so difficult about getting this movie made? There is no lead character, there's no script, there's no what? I
have two lead characters. The thing is, I don't have a script yet that I feel...
Fictional characters.
Yeah, I don't want to be...
Live through it almost a kind of... Without, I know this is not the way to say this, but live through it in the same way that... What's a good example of how you would set the plot?
Well, I would take I had two characters, one who was born and raised in Berkeley and one who was born and raised in Connecticut, who wind up in a school in the Midwest together and...
Can't stay.
Maybe, one of those schools, and they cross paths a number of times. They don't really know each other, and it's the two paths that they take. One takes the path towards, becomes a freedom rider and, protests against the war in Vietnam. The other one becomes a more, goes into the military, and it's how their paths cross and eventually what would happen to them. I don't want to say what I'm going to have happen to them because that would blow the whole... I have the idea for the story in my head. I just have not executed it as well as I would like.
Is this a Castle Rock thing, or you turn it? You don't go to?
Yeah, no, this is Castle Rock.
So you got the money going in to make the film.
Yes, if I get a script that I feel happy with. And that's the hardest thing because, like I say, to take on a big, you talk about an epic, you talk about something that, starts with the Kennedy assassination and ends with the man's landing on the moon. I mean, a lot happened in the city.
You have characters in your mind in terms of actors who play the performances?
Yeah, I do. But, those change as the time goes by. But I have to, I don't want to be laughed out of show business when I undertake it.
Great to have you here.
It's great to be here.
Thank you
What
very
a pleasure.
Much. My pleasure.
You're so easy.